My name is Vivian. People call me Madam V. I dress like wealth, walk like success, and speak like a woman born with gold in her blood. But they didn't know. I started from the gutters of pain, betrayal, and hunger. What they see now is a woman shaped by scars, dressed in diamonds, and powered by pride. But if only I had known that the woman I splashed dirty water on that rainy afternoon was the same woman who gave life to my husband. Maybe, just maybe, I would have rolled down from that car myself and kissed her feet. But life doesn't always give warnings. Let me take you back to how it all began. It was the first Monday in March. The sky wore a gloomy face, and the rain poured like it had something against the world. I was late for a business pitch, a multi-million naira boutique expansion deal. My car splashed through the flooded street, and then a loud scream. I looked through the tinted window and saw her, an old woman, soaked from head to toe in muddy water, trying to gather the scattered bananas and oranges that had spilled from her basin. She was kneeling in the middle of the road, trembling. Her wrapper was soaked, her feet bare, and her face. Her face was something I should have looked at closer. But no, pride had eaten my soul. I lowered the glass just slightly, scoffed, and shouted, "Next time, stay in your gutter place, old woman." Then I laughed, the type of laugh that cuts. I added, "Your days are numbered. Even poverty is tired of your face." And with that, I rolled the glass back up, threw on my sunglasses, and asked my driver to move. The old woman didn't speak. She just stood there, frozen, her eyes following my car like someone who had just seen her past return in a new body. That night, something strange happened. My husband came home unusually excited. "Vivian," he called, "you won't believe who I saw today." "I'm too tired for gist, darling," I replied, sipping my wine, legs crossed, already scrolling through Instagram, admiring a luxury necklace I wanted to order. He smiled. "I saw my mother." My hand froze. "What?" I asked slowly. "My mother. After so many years. Remember I told you she disappeared when I was little? Everyone thought she died. Vivian, she's alive. And guess what? She stays right here in this city and sells fruits by the roadside near that old broken junction." Suddenly, my throat dried. My stomach twisted. The wine turned bitter. I turned to him, heart pounding, face pale. "What does she look like?" I asked, trying to act casual. He smiled brightly. "She's aged, of course. Gray hair, tiny frame. Her eyes still hold that spark. But," he paused, "she told me something that shocked me." I swallowed hard. "What did she say?" He looked at me for a long moment and said, "She said a rich woman in a black SUV splashed her with dirty water today, laughed at her, and called her gutter trash. She said she didn't get angry. She just watched the car drive off. But she told me something strange. I couldn't breathe properly. I felt my hands shake." He continued. "She said, 'That woman will kneel before me one day without knowing who I am. She will cry not because I cursed her, but because life will teach her the kind of lesson that no money can erase.'" The wine glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. My husband stood up immediately, concerned. "Are you okay, Vivian?" I stood there, numb. I wanted to scream. But pride wouldn't let me confess. That night, I couldn't sleep. My past mistakes began knocking like midnight spirits. I remembered my own mother, how I once denied her in public just to blend with the rich girls in university. I remembered the woman who washed my clothes when I had nothing, the one I blocked from entering my boutique because her clothes smelled like charcoal. But this time, it wasn't just another poor woman. This was my husband's mother, the one I had long prayed to meet someday, the one I hoped to win over and impress. And now she had seen the real me. Not the one on Instagram, not the one in luxury magazines, but the monster behind the makeup. The next morning, I dressed up and told my husband I wanted to meet his mother. He was excited. So excited, he even offered to drive me. But my legs trembled, because I knew deep inside, The old woman I mocked, the one I crushed with my pride, was the same woman I had prayed to God to love me as a daughter-in-law. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I couldn't even look my husband in the eye as we drove to the broken junction he now called blessed. My hands trembled on my lap, hidden beneath the expensive silk of my designer dress. The moment he said, "That's her stand, just by the mango tree," my heart fell to the ground. She was sitting on a small stool, arranging bananas, ground nuts, and a few garden eggs on a tray. Her wrapper was the same, still damp from yesterday. But her eyes were like knives. Sharp, quiet, deep. And the moment they met mine, she recognized me. But she didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply looked at me like I was invisible. My husband smiled and ran ahead like an excited boy. "Mama," he called, kneeling before her. She cupped his face gently with both hands and said, "My son, my eyes have seen you again." Then her gaze rose slowly and landed on me. For a second, the whole world froze. I tried to smile. Fake, crooked, embarrassed. She looked at me for a long, long moment, then said quietly, "Is this your wife?" "Yes, Mama," my husband beamed. "Her name is Vivian. She's amazing. Smart, rich, respectful. I couldn't have asked for more." Mama smiled faintly. "Indeed, she is very rich." I swallowed. I could feel her words slicing through me like chilled glass. She stood slowly, wiped her hands on her wrapper, then bent and picked up the same muddy bucket she carried yesterday. Before I could greet her, she turned to my husband and said, "My son, I need to speak to you. Alone." I panicked. "No, please." But she turned and walked toward a nearby tree. My husband followed, and I stood there, exposed, as passers-by whispered. That same girl who had insulted her just yesterday, now standing awkwardly before her stall. The same stall I had once called gutter disgrace. A few minutes later, my husband returned. His face had changed. The smile was gone. His eyes no longer sparkled. He didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. He just walked past me, entered the car, and drove off. He left me there. I turned to Mama, confused, angry, shaking. "What did you tell him? Why did you?" She held up her hand. I told him the truth. "What truth?" I snapped. She looked at me with a kind of quiet that made my bones shiver. "I told him how you treated an old stranger like trash, unaware you were spilling dirt on your own blessing." Her voice was calm, but it hit harder than a slap. I stood there, humiliated, scared, and stuck between pride and shame. "But why would you?" She cut me off. "I told him not to be angry with you," she said. "I told him not to ask you any questions." Relief tried to fill me, but her next words crushed it. "I told him to watch you, to study your true character without your makeup, your money, or your masks." I froze. "And I told him," she added, "that if you ever come back here again, I will sell my fruits in silence and pretend you're heir." Tears gathered in my eyes. "But I didn't know." "Exactly," she said sharply. "You didn't know. That's why you misbehaved. And that's the problem with people like you. You only respect people after you know what they're worth." The days that followed were worse than any punishment. My husband changed completely. He stopped talking during meals. He no longer kissed me goodbye. He became distant, cold, and unreadable. One night, I walked into his study and begged, "Please talk to me, what's going on?" He looked at me, slowly, coldly. "I used to think you were powerful, but now I see you're just a woman in expensive shoes with a cheap heart." Tears ran down my cheeks. "You're judging me for a mistake. I didn't know she was your mother." He stood up, face hard. "But you knew she was a human being. That should have been enough." And then he left the room. A week later, the blow came. He moved out of the house. Didn't explain. Didn't fight. Just left. His lawyers sent me a message. Time apart is necessary for healing. But I knew the truth. My marriage was cracking, and it all began with the mud I splashed in pride. 1 month later, the real twist came like thunder. A man in a suit walked into my boutique. He handed me a court notice. Mama had sold a piece of land to someone who wanted to use it to build a massive mall. Guess what? The land belonged to my husband. Land he inherited from his late father, but didn't know Mama still had the documents. She never mentioned it until now. Now guess who owned the land? The same woman I insulted. Guess who was building a boutique right in front of mine? A new competitor, sponsored by Mama's land money. The sky was clear, but my world had never been so clouded. I stood frozen in front of my boutique, staring at the giant billboard that mocked everything I had ever worked for. Golden Vine Boutique, coming soon. Right across the road. Right where my best customers passed every day. Right in front of my legacy. It was more than a billboard. It was a silent war declaration. And at the corner of that banner, smiling softly, wrapped in a royal blue head tie, was the face of the woman I once splashed mud on. Her name was written boldly. Mama Beatrice, patron of women empowerment. She looked nothing like the weak, trembling fruit seller from the street that rainy day. Now she stood for something. Now the whole city was talking about her. And I was the villain of a viral video. The moment the video dropped, it was as if the city itself turned its back on me. A shaky phone camera had captured the exact moment I shouted from my SUV. Your days are numbered. Even poverty is tired of your face. It captured the splash, the scream, the humiliation. People reposted it with captions like, "This is why wealth without compassion is dangerous." She insulted a queen in disguise. And the worst one, she splashed mud on her husband's mother, unknowingly. And now, fate is washing her pride away in buckets. By the third day, I had lost nearly half of my VIP clients. Some even returned their purchases and demanded refunds. The rest silently unfollowed my business pages. My staff whispered behind my back. The once busy boutique now echoed with silence. But what broke me wasn't the lost customers. It was the silence of my husband. He hadn't called since the day he left. Until that evening. The message was short. I saw the video. Don't reach out to my mother. Let time teach you what apologies cannot. I stared at the screen for minutes, then collapsed on the floor. No man had ever made me cry like that. Not even my father, who abandoned us when I was 9. But this felt like the slow death of everything I called home. A week passed. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A popular business magazine released a headline. From Mud to Millions, how a humble fruit seller built a fashion empire with dignity. Inside the pages were pictures of Mama Beatrice, in meetings with international investors, hugging young girls at empowerment events, cutting ribbons beside governors' wives. She had become a symbol of grace, a survivor, a woman with a story. Meanwhile, I had become the face of pride and disgrace. I decided to confront her. I needed to see her face to face, not to beg, not to explain, but to ask her one question that kept burning in my chest like fire. So I wore the plainest gown I owned, tied my hair back, and went to the stall by the mango tree, where her story began. But when I got there, someone else was sitting on her stool. A young girl. I asked where Mama Beatrice was. She looked at me strangely. "She no longer stays here," the girl said. "She sold the stand. She owns offices now, 3 of them. She doesn't come back here." My lips trembled. "I need to see her." The girl paused, then handed me a card. She left this. She said if any woman with a painted face and a proud heart ever comes looking for her, she should give her this. I opened the card with shaky hands. It had one sentence written in calm handwriting. When a woman uses her mouth to curse another, it echoes. But when her actions curse her soul, even silence becomes loud. No name, no address, just that line. I stood there in the sun, tears rolling, realizing something heavier than humiliation had just hit me. This woman had erased me without lifting a finger. They say time heals, but they don't tell you that guilt has no clock and shame doesn't know how to sleep. My world hadn't just fallen apart. It had turned against me piece by piece. My boutique was losing customers. My husband had vanished into silence. And the woman I once splashed with mud? She was now on magazine covers, hailed as a national inspiration. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened next. It began with a brown envelope left on my boutique counter before sunrise. No name, no return address. Inside it, a birth certificate. At first, I ignored it, until I glanced again and saw her name. Mother's name, Beatrice Daniel. Child's name, Sophia Daniel. Born, March 2nd, 1997. Place of birth, a small health clinic in Ipitu village. But what shook me was the photograph stapled behind the document. It was old, faded. Mama Beatrice, younger and thinner, holding a crying baby. Standing next to her was a teenage girl. That girl was me. I dropped the envelope like it had caught fire. How? When? What was this? I tore through my drawers until I found my old secondary school photo album. Inside was a group picture from our school's health outreach trip to a rural clinic. And there, in the background, almost invisible, was that same woman, Mama Beatrice. Not a fruit seller this time, not a rising fashion mogul, but a quiet figure in the shadows, watching us, holding a baby. The same baby whose birth certificate now sat in my hand. I called an old classmate. Do you remember that outreach trip to that village hospital? She laughed. Of course, where they gave us those weird bitter drinks. Do you remember a woman there? Holding a baby. Silence. Actually, yeah. There was drama that day. One woman started crying. She said she knew one of us, but the teachers rushed her away. Do you remember who she said she knew? No idea. We all thought she was mad. Why are you asking, Vivian? But I didn't answer, because deep down, I already feared the truth. The next morning, just before I opened the boutique, a young woman walked in. She wasn't dressed like a customer. Faded jeans, tired braids, eyes that spoke too much pain for someone her age. Madam V, she said calmly. Yes, I'm not here to shop. I'm here to give you something. She handed me another envelope, then turned to leave. Wait, I called out. Who are you? She looked over her shoulder. I'm the child in the picture. My name is Sophia. I froze. You? I came to see the woman who once stood in front of my mother and walked away. My lips trembled. What are you saying? She walked slowly back toward me. You came to our clinic years ago. My mother ran after you. She told the nurses. That's her. That's my daughter. But you screamed at her. You said, I have no mother. My mother is dead. And you walked away. My heart dropped. She continued, eyes glassy with unshed tears. She never stopped waiting. She told me every day, one day, your sister will come back. But you didn't. You became rich. And she became invisible. I gasped. Wait, did you say sister? She nodded, then dropped the final bomb. She's not just my mother. She's your mother too. The world around me cracked. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Sophia, my sister? Mama Beatrice, my birth mother? But then, my eyes widened further. If she's my mother, if Sophia is my sister, if everything I thought about my past is a lie, then who is the man I married? I rushed back to my room and pulled out my marriage documents, blood pounding in my ears. My husband's full name, Michael Daniel. His mother's name, Beatrice Daniel. The same name, the same woman, the same bloodline. I clutched my chest, falling to my knees. The man I married, the one I shared a bed with, the one I built a future with, was my brother. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to get notified for more intruding stories.